might as well dive into some of the introductory stuff of what to expect from a formality standpoint for the webinar, and then we'll dive into some introductions and we'll get rolling. So I guess first and foremost, thank you everyone for hopping on. This is Realync's first hosted webinar. We've participated in a ton of webinars, we've joined a ton of webinars, and this is the first one that we're actually hosting. So super excited and super appreciative of our panelists, super excited and appreciative of everyone who's joined in to talk about the future of multifamily leasing. Obviously, a lot has changed in 2020. And so really pulled together some experts and people in the space that have varying experiences and can add a lot of color context to what's happened, what's happening, and potentially where we're going. So formalities for the webinar. First off, Q&A is open. Chat is open as well, but if you have specific questions that you want to direct to myself as the moderator or to our panelists, please do type those in the Q&A section of Zoom. And also, we will have a couple polls throughout, I believe 2-ish polls throughout the course of the webinar. So that'll just pop up in front of you, submit your answers, and we're excited to pull together that feedback. Bad pun. Thanks, Katrina. So I guess without further ado, enough of me talking. I really want to just be the catalyst of a great discussion for us. And you all are probably primarily here for our panelists and wanting to hear from them. So if each of you could give a brief introduction and some remarks about who you are, the company you're with, title, role, and things like that. Would love to kick it off with you, Katrina, since your picture's first.
Yeah, I love that picture. My hair was done that day. I'm Katrina Green. My title is Senior Regional Property Manager, and I'm at a company that has about 3,500 units. So we're small in the grand scheme of things. And I oversee the 2 regionals that we have. And just as it relates to leasing specifically, really I'm the one in R&D in terms of the products that we use. And then I am the policy writer. So I tell them what to use and how to use it.
I guess that means I'm next. So I am Jenna Miller. I am Senior Director of Marketing and Customer Engagement with Bozzuto. For those that aren't familiar, we're an experience-focused management company. We have almost 80,000 units. I've been with the company for about 8 years. My role is mainly focused on evaluating the leasing experience from the customer's perspective and really looking for opportunities and ways to arm our teams with strategies for adding value, and then also removing friction points from the entire renter journey.
Awesome. My name is Louisa Smoo. I am a property manager with Greystar. I'm currently working at the Pullman, which is a lease-up kind of new construction property in Denver, Colorado. If you're familiar with Denver, it's in the Union Station neighborhood. I have been with Greystar for about 6 years now, and this is my 5th lease-up project specifically. So obviously lots to do with leasing, and that leasing is really our #1 priority in any lease-up deal. So super excited to be here, so thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you all for taking the time to join. Real quick, I am Matt Wyrick, co-founder, CEO of Realync. We are multifamily's leading video leasing and resident engagement solution. Have about 430,000 units on the platform today, and super excited to talk through leasing in particular. There's a reason we call Realync a video leasing solution. It's a big focus of ours, and we have learned a lot from the panelists that we've pulled together today. They are all rock stars and champions of leasing, of virtual leasing, of multifamily, and so really excited to get their input. So ultimately, where we're going with the discussion today, we've got a couple different buckets of conversation points, more or less, and we'll try to spend between 10, 15 minutes in each of those buckets and leave ample time at the end for just open Q&A, dialogue, and discussion. And so directionally first, just want to kind of have a level setting conversation. Obviously, it's still 2020. 2020 has been insane, continues to be insane, and So much changed in multifamily overnight back in March. We all know this, nothing new. It's what all the webinars and conversations have been about. But since we're focusing on leasing in particular on this one, curious what, Louisa, for you in particular, what did leasing look like for you guys pre-March of 2020? And then what changed? How did you guys react? What changed? What did you put in place immediately as that emergency response mode?
For sure, yeah. So I think before COVID, kind of pre-COVID, at the Pullman specifically, we were just really focused on like a service-based experience. And we really wanted to make sure that everyone who came through our door kind of had a different experience than they would going to other comps. So we had really like focused on our tour path and created kind of these like stopping points where it was like, okay, here you're going to introduce the prospect to the lifestyle director. He's going to show you about our lifestyle team. And then when you're here, you know, you're going to talk about why we're called the Pullman and how that ties in with our brand. So our vision was very like experience-based. And obviously a huge part about having people in the door as well is just to be able to show them your product and for them to be able to really like see and feel what they might be moving into. So at that point we were using Realync, and for us, Realync was a tool to kind of remind people of the product that they saw. So we'd follow up with our leads after and we'd be like, thanks so much, Steve, for touring. Here's videos of all the units that we saw today. I think what happened with when COVID hit, obviously the kind of first stage of that was like, all right, now nobody can come into your office. So how do we like still kind of carry this experience from being able to like touch and see somebody to now having to do it virtually? So I think one of the biggest changes we initially had to make was like, okay, we've been using this tool to show our product and we've been like behind the camera, but now we actually have to like get in front of the camera. And we have to sell ourselves. We have to like create our personality online. So that was kind of one of the first things, was like going to virtual leasing right away, was just learning how to use like the virtual leasing product and being like, hi, I'm Louisa. I'm so excited to meet you, even though we can't see each other. But then also kind of building our toolbox and creating videos like with our leasing people specifically, where maybe they're introducing themselves or they're talking to you about what our lifestyle team does. So I think the biggest shift was like, okay, we can meet people in person and let's send them these follow-up videos, to being like, okay, now we have to get comfortable in being in front of the camera and be able to like kind of create a personality and a presence online or over the computer.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jenna and Katrina, for you guys, taking that broader point of view portfolio wide, what did it look like for you guys having to put that reaction plan and that response plan in place, and what did you guys do?
I would say for us, because we're a third party, it wasn't easy. We couldn't just say, here's the solution, everybody go and do it. It was kind of a mixed bag of what our teams had already and where we could implement certain things like Realync. The properties that were already using Realync, I think, had a little bit of a head start on the ones that weren't. And so, you know, helping them optimize the tool and then getting others on board. But because it kind of varied in terms of the technology that our teams were using, we really kind of honed in on the art behind giving the virtual tour. And we actually created a training called The Art of the Virtual Tour to really help our teams figure out how to achieve what we were focused on achieving in that in-person experience, which for us was all about building trust, making connections, and how do we now do that in a virtual setting. And so that's kind of where we honed in. That's what the training is all about, how to make an authentic and fun and memorable experience that's going to set us apart from our competitors. And actually we had a review come through just yesterday, which was really timely and relevant, from a customer who was for about 2 months, you know, looking at properties, and they had narrowed it down to 3. We were one of them, and they ended up choosing our community because they had such a great experience, even though the others were cheaper. And they literally in their quote wrote that that's the power of building great relationships. And I thought that that was awesome. And that's really what it's all about. So
amazing. I think my perspective initially, just because of my role in the company, is like, how do I balance, you know, safety with business, and which one wins? And, you know, trying to make sure that safety was the front runner and, you know, business just had to slide in right there, past it in second place in that moment. And I think that we, kind of like what Jenna said, like the sites that had some of that technology already had a head start, but we had most of the technology in place. We just were so grossly underutilizing it. So the shift for us was really just like, hey, remember that time last week when I told you that we underutilize our tech? Well, now you don't have a choice. And trying to get them to weave personality into it and realize like everything's a conversation, whether it's on a text or an email or a phone call, a voice, a video, etc. And getting them to uphold, that part, and also just to not freak out. I mean, we were trying to keep our employees calm while we were trying to train them to use things to keep business flowing. I do think that some of our team members focused on the business portion, and that allowed them to stay a little bit calmer in their personal life. So, I hope that we helped, guide it in that way. But my focus immediately was like, how am I going to balance safety and business and make good decisions for those team members?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it's more so going deeper into making what you were doing more effective and efficient while layering on those other things. And yeah, definitely makes sense. And Jenna, I love what you had talked about of building that relationship. And Louisa, you talked about just how important getting people physically in the property for you guys was. What's been the biggest pain point since making that switch to virtual? What's hurt the most during that transition for you guys?
I mean, I think change is, oh, sorry, do you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead, Louisa.
Okay. I think change is always just tough. And I think with COVID, it was really, really quick change. But I think as a leader, at least what I've learned is like for your team, you have to be excited about the change for kind of them to hop on board and follow you and be like, okay, let's do this. Because obviously if you're like, oh my God, what's happening? Now we have to go virtual. Like obviously they're not going to be really excited to use the tools that you have. So I think it was just really quick change, and it was like change mixed with the unknown. So, first people couldn't come into the office. So it's like, oh my God, we have to go virtual. And then it was like, oh, we can do self-guided tours. And again, with self-guided tours, it was like, how do you sell to somebody who's like wandering around your building alone? So it was like navigating that change. And then it was like, oh, now people can come in person. But obviously what we've learned with COVID is there's people who, like don't want to wear masks, and there's people that do want to wear masks. So there's people that are like, sure, I'll do an in-person tour. And there's people that are like, I don't want to even come into your property. So I think change is hard, but it was about being really flexible. And I have been providing those kind of flexible tour options to people so that people came to your property if they wanted to, but they kind of felt that they still had that control and they still had that choice. But yeah, I think just change can be hard, but if you're excited about it, I think your team, wants to get on board and they're going to be excited about it too.
I think that's awesome advice. I would say for our teams, one of the biggest challenges, and I like to use this analogy, is that they were basically having to repair the plane while they were flying it. And so they overnight had to kind of completely reimagine the way that they were doing business and how they were connecting with customers, and at the same time still had residents who they needed to be over communicating with about what was happening. They had to be taking care of their residents. They had clients that they were answering to and buildings that they needed to fill. And there were still people that needed to move during a pandemic, whether they liked it or not. So there was a lot going on. And I think we just had to learn to kind of be okay with not having all the answers right away. And it's a little bit of trial and error. Definitely learned about the importance of just listening to our customers and being willing to kind of hear what they needed and their feedback, and then pivoting based on that. And that's something that we've been really trying to do. And we actually have what we call our resident advisory panel that we go to try to get some of those insights to help drive business decisions that we're making. But I think that was definitely one of the biggest challenges for our teams.
Yeah,
I think my pain point was like getting smacked in the face with my clearly ineffective rollout policies or plans, or how I get things out to everybody. And I'm so passionate about all of it, like Realync, Kurt, key texting, active building. Like I love all of it, but I don't obviously convey that appropriately to my team members that are the end user, if you will. at least in our organization, the end user, because I think that, and some of my team members have said this, they've said that they really feel like a sense of remorse that they had some of these tools all along and just didn't use it. So like key texting was one, because to me, it's like the easiest thing to use really quickly. And some of the teams really latched on like immediately to that long before COVID. They were like, ooh, this is easy and efficient and I can do less work and do this. I do think a lot of people try to find out how to do less work. So, I heard some of my team members say to me like, gosh, I wish I had done that faster. I wish I had done that before, and not even all about COVID, just about efficiency and ease of use. So then I bring it back immediately and internalize it and go, wow, how did they not know how great it was? Where did I mess up? So I'm taking some very deep looks at how I do rollout specifically.
Rollouts are hard. They're so hard. They're tough. So.
Yep. Absolutely. No, definitely a lot of grace on that front. That's for sure. And there are so many rollouts, so many disparate technologies and platforms and all that. Yeah. So I guess back to you real quick, Katrina. We're 6 months from March, which seems absolutely insane. It's flown by, still in COVID, but how are things settled in for you guys? How are things settled in for your teams? I don't want to use the term new norm, but where are your teams settling in terms of their leasing process and what they're doing today versus what they were doing immediately after in emergency response mode?
I think the biggest change now is probably just like some level of acceptance of, that a lot of the things that we did that were good will stay because they were always good and they would have been good before COVID anyway. So I think at this point, maybe there's a new level of trust for their leadership teams when they do purchase a product to say like, there's a reason, like there's a really good business reason why we want you to use this. And let's all talk about, how to be a little bit quicker with welcoming it instead of rejecting it because it's new and different. So I think just like the mindset of all the teams are like, I hope it's like, okay, I trust my leaders. My leaders showed me that I can trust them. And now I'm going to let that stay with me, through whatever else is new for us, coming soon or coming next year. I hope that's what happened. I hope that's where we're settled in is like, I trust my leaders. So maybe.
Absolutely. Jenna, Louisa, how about for you guys? How have you seen your teams settling in? What is standard operating procedures for the teams now?
I think there's no one size fits all. It kind of varies by property and, the kinds of customers that they have. But I think, from March until now, I feel like our teams have kind of found their rhythm, and then things are going to change again. We're gonna have to do this all again. But I think for now they've kind of found their rhythm, and now they've had the breathing room to really think about, how to make it even more thoughtful and memorable and get creative and how they're creating those virtual experiences. I also think now that we're kind of bringing back in the in-person tours and bringing in the self-guided tours, that they're starting to figure out that sweet spot of, if we do a virtual tour first and then, maybe I follow up with these types of videos and then they come in for the self-guided, like that's yielding the best results, which is kind of cool to see that they're kind of like pulling those insights and watching how it's generating results with their customers.
Yeah, and for my team, obviously my team is a lot smaller than the amount of people Jenna and Katrina manage, but I think we've done really well to adapt to it. I think if anything, kind of similar to what they said, we had the technology before this happened, but it was just like we weren't utilizing it to its full capability. But now we have this like crazy, insane library of videos on way more than just like filming the product itself. So I think, it's really enabled us to like really build our toolbox so that we can get things to customers really before they even ask for them. So, and I think too, is if you are new to Realync or thinking about using it, I've always just like, there's usually that one person on your team who's like extremely excited about it and really good about it. So it's just important to leverage that strength and kind of let somebody run with it. And we've done that with our leasing manager, Sergio. He's just like created all these incredible videos, and then it's great because then we can only use them whenever we really need them.
Sergio's fantastic. We love him. So real quick, do you want to pull up our first poll? Obviously, we've talked a lot about virtual leasing and how it has invaded the space in 2020. So a couple questions on the poll. If you, the audience, can take a couple seconds to fill that out for us. Excited to get your input on all that, but definitely want to continue the conversation as well as we're working through that. So really now we're in the thick of budget season, and no one could have predicted 2020 ever. If someone did, that's unbelievable and kind of scary. But for 2021, we're having to shake the magic 8 ball, trying to figure out what happens next. Where do we go from here? And so curious, Jenna, start with you. What are you guys prioritizing with your teams right now, particularly leasing focused, but obviously there's quite the funnel from marketing, how that transitions into leasing, how they respond to leads. And so there's a lot that goes into leasing. But what are some of your guys' internal conversations? Obviously you don't need to share too much Bazzuta secret sauce, but what are you guys thinking about for 2021? What are your considerations, and what are some of the conversations you're having around?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of tools and strategies, I think we're really kind of honing in on our conversion and lead nurturing tools. We want to make sure, because, you know, clients are feeling kind of uncertain and wanting to be relatively cautious with, you know, how we're spending our money for the remainder of this year and into next year, as efficient as possible with our marketing dollars and the leads that we are getting. And so really making sure and tightening up our strategies and our tools that help our teams be efficient when it comes to conversion. That's everything from optimizing our CRM to different communication methods like texting and using, you know, AI and chatbots. But we've also, and this is just really timely and top of mind, is recently implemented a program called our Welcome Home Commitment, which is just another, it's not a tool, but it's a program that we're equipping our teams with to be able to kind of empathize with our customers and be proactive about addressing customer concerns and their needs to try to help them convert. And so that program essentially talks about, you know, here's the 70-point inspection that we do and the cleaning process that happens before you move in. Your door is sealed, so when you walk through the door, you're the next person that's in the apartment. And then a 30-day guarantee that just, you know, gives them the peace of mind that if I do have to make this decision and I can't, you know, visit in person or the way that I want to, that I have that peace of mind, that I have options. So, and that's been really helpful, but continuing to do things like that for the remainder of this year and into next year is going to be a focus for Bazzuto.
Love that. That's great. Katrina, what about for you all?
I think mine is probably in terms of 2021, it's less about, you know, making some dramatic changes on the leasing side, because I think that we did so much of that already, but I'm actually looking at just different areas that we might be able to trim. Like I joke with people now, you know, they acted like if we weren't available to accept their package, that they weren't gonna be able to, you know, live basically. And now we're, you know, people are getting more packages than ever. And somehow miraculously they're getting to their door. Like, how did it happen? Poof, you know, it's like they act like it's magic. And so, you know, I just think like where maybe a year ago, everybody's hair was on fire for how to figure out how to do packages. And just to preface that with, I really only have a couple of controlled access buildings. So clearly I know it's different when you have these open air corridors, but I do think that the reality is it $40,000 package locker system, or does that $40,000 go somewhere else some other way? Because now people have figured out how to do some of that. And I also think too, I've been researching a little bit about like what single family home rentals do, like these mass managed single family home rentals, because their list of things that they will come out and do from a maintenance perspective is different than what we do on the apartment side. And to be honest, a lot of our residents kind of said thanks but no thanks on some of the maintenance items. You know, all of a sudden they can change a light bulb. They learned how to change a light bulb. and maybe some of these other tasks that the reality behind how much service the person wanted in their home is maybe a little bit different, and they might want to do some self-help. And, someone changed a filter, an AC filter, and sent an email about how proud of themselves that they've changed an AC or a furnace filter. And I was like, well, congrats. Welcome to adulting. But I think the reality behind using video to show them how to help themselves and not have someone in their apartment is, I think that's good. I think there's still going to be some that want us to visit on the daily and take care of a lot for them. But I just think that we can look at those processes and probably mitigate time spent on the maintenance side. And then again, just look at the big picture on some of those things like packages. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and not directly leasing related, but did have a quick follow-up question for you from Karen about the packages. If you feel that the package issue is easier because people are home right now and sheltering in place, that they have that comfort and confidence that the packages aren't going to just sit out in the hallway and accrue or be at risk or anything like that?
That's a possibility. It's a possibility that they do have a different comfort level because of that. But no one's come back yet and complained about that situation. No one's come back and said, look, I've been back to work for 2 months and you've been back in your offices, for 3 months. Like, I'd like you to start signing for my package again. And I want to come here every day and have an exchange with you. That's not the feedback that I'm getting at this exact point. And I'm not saying that we won't still look at some of those solutions. I just want to look at that differently. Like, if it's locked up in my clubhouse and it's a high traffic area, high traffic means something different now. High touch, like that, all of those are like, ew, scary words. And so I'm just going to look at that differently in terms of my spend and my setup and my layup, how I do that. I might just be outside. I might put in more parcel lockers. I might partner with someone, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Appreciate it. And Louisa, you guys are in the thick of lease up. And so obviously making that push to your targets, to your goals, what are you guys prioritizing right now? What are some of the big initiatives, objectives? What are you guys continuing to evolve, shift, and looking to put in place to continue pushing forward at the property?
Yeah, I think budgeting wise, we're not changing a lot to 2021. And I think that's just because with lease ups, you go into your budget and you put so much money in marketing because obviously you need to go from 0 to 100. So, we kind of gear up to have all the tools we need to. So whether that's already budgeting for Realync or knowing that we're going to be spending a lot of money in locator fees in the Denver market or really pushing the resident referrals or whatever that is. So I don't think we really change too much just because we always have so many dollars in marketing for lease up. I'm sure if you talk to stabilized assets, that's probably a very different conversation, especially if they're having to fill more vacancy than they probably expected. So yeah, I think really, like you said, though, we're in the middle of our lease up. So it's going to be continue to utilizing these tools. I think what's great is there's some good things that have came out of COVID. We always had the virtual leasing tool, but we weren't really utilizing it. And now somebody's like, hey, I live in San Francisco and I want to move to Denver, but I don't want to visit before. We know exactly what to do and it feels really seamless. So budget wise, truly, I think to what Katrina said, there are places for sure we can cut. We haven't opened our coffee machine and kind of shocking how much money you spend on coffee supplies. So there's little things like that. But I think when it goes to marketing and leasing specifically, it's been pretty consistent.
Yeah, that makes sense. Appreciate it. So real quick, I do want to pull up the poll results from the first poll. Super curious to see where we land. So how long has your property provided virtual leasing options? So 60% of the audience, it's fresh, it's new. So that's exciting. And that means that there's a lot of new things being figured out. And so I think we're about to dive into a fun section of the nuts and bolts of getting practical about implementation and all of that. But then also, what is your property utilizing? Good amount of Realync users. Welcome. Thank you. Appreciative. Some DIYers, FaceTime, Zoom, 3D 360. Not all mutually exclusive, but yeah, definitely quite the spread. And so that's what we're seeing. And that's not surprising or shocking to us whatsoever. I mean, especially when we're talking about emergency response mode, people used what was there and what was known and what was comfortable to keep business rolling. So now we are in that window of getting more strategic, getting more integrated and thoughtful about how everything plays together. So I appreciate everyone's participation in that poll. And we will have one more poll before we wrap, but really want to get practical and tactical with everyone now. So Katrina, you had mentioned learning so much about implementation of technology and things like that. So what, moving forward, if Sheehan introduces new platforms or new technologies, what are you looking at? What are you prioritizing? How has your mindset shifted a little bit in terms of tactically implementing systems and processes like this?
I mean, at this point, I don't have anything on the horizon that's like, I need to have this new tool specifically, or at least not for leasing. But I would say that I am learning to make sure that if there's a component for it from my, leasing person to the consumer, there's probably a component from me to my employees. So, we use a combination of those tools together. So like, well, for example, over Labor Day, was it Labor Day? What was the first holiday? Memorial Day, excuse me. For Memorial Day, we recorded a video of our president delivering the message that everybody got to go home early on Friday. And then we used key texting to text it to all the employees so they all got it at once. So, using personal devices to send a message directly from the president to the employee. And because we see those analytics, we saw that people watched it over and over again. So we assumed that the employees showed it to their family members maybe, and it was witty. We're a witty bunch, so we made it fun and funny. And so, I think right now when I look at the tech that I have, or if I look at something else, I want to make sure that there's a component there. If I'm telling my leasing teams they have to use X, Y, and Z to stay connected to a prospect or customer or resident, I need to use those same tools to stay connected to my own teams and practice what I preach a little bit. So I would say that for me is sort of what I'm looking at right now in terms of what I already have in, as part of our tech stack. And then if I look at something else in the future, I might consider that as well, because I think it's all relative.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Such a good campaign, using that to track with your team to see how they engage. Super fun and very relevant to the leasing process as well. So Jenna, for you guys, you've mentioned some new programs that you've implemented and how you guys have made tweaks to some processes and whatnot. What does all that look like for you? Like boots on the ground, what have you guys done to implement such processes and procedures? And I know firsthand a lot of your portfolio has recently launched Realync in 2020. And so how have you guys been approaching training, implementation, rolling out new processes and procedures? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, I think, and to kind of chime into things that Katrina has touched on with like rolling out, it's challenging. And when you roll something out, it's, we've definitely learned that you can't just roll it out and then forget about it and move on to the next. It's kind of like continue going back to it. And so we've had a lot of success with, in regards to training, with just really cultivating a culture of idea sharing across our properties and kind of peer-to-peer idea sharing. And so, probably, I think it was April, we did a virtual tour panel where we had some of our like Realync it was internal, but some of our Realync power user properties and some properties that didn't have it in their budget to use Realync, and kind of got them on an internal panel just like this, where, no matter who you were, whether you're a regional or leasing manager or a sales and marketing associate, could dial in and kind of listen to strategies that have worked, or maybe lessons that have been learned at other properties, and apply that to your property so that, we're all on the same boat. And let's not, try to recreate the wheel every single time. If somebody's had this challenge and they've overcome it, like, let's hear about it. And we've kind of carried that through into this series we call OpEx Online, so operational excellence. And we are continuing to do these panel events for different topics. And so we had one on social media, which was really popular. We had one on nurturing. And there's like no end in sight. I think they've been really well received, and people like hearing from their peers. And I think kind of the silver lining with it is that it's given us an opportunity to recognize and celebrate and give visibility to some people and some properties, that it's, you know, it's a challenging time right now, and we don't have the opportunity to do that in person like we might otherwise would be. So it's been really nice and well received.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. And Louisa, for you guys, you had hit on something earlier that I love and appreciate, and is such a smart way of pulling tools and systems that you already have in place together to be more effective and efficient. So you had mentioned your self-guided tours and trying to find a way to add your voice and your touch to that self-guided tour process. Can you talk through, for your team, how you guys came up with the idea to use videos on your self-guided tour path to put your team front and center in that experience that otherwise wouldn't have your team in front of your prospects?
Yeah, so yeah, that was kind of the big thing for self-guided tours, is like somebody walking through a vacant unit without like knowing kind of its features just seems a little bit pointless. So we used Realync's QR code feature, and basically we kind of put these different signs around the vacant unit or maybe the club room that had these little QR codes. So maybe it would say like gas stoves, and there would be this cute little sign with a QR code so they could take a picture of it, and up would pop up a video of somebody from our team being like, we are the only, you know, property in this market with gas stoves, and it would just be giving them like a little spiel on these things. So yeah, that was one of the things we did. And I think what we really focused on from like March to May was we did have a lot of downtime. Like people weren't walking into our office. So I remember asking my team, like, what can we do now so that we can really build our toolbox so that when we are really busy, we already kind of have everything we need. So we did that with self-guided tours. We did like custom intro videos. We did like how to arrive to the property and where you park and how you show up to tour. We went to every single unit and took view photos just to like have them saved. And I think I've actually kind of watched it really helped, because we are just anticipating what customers already need, and we're really being proactive versus reactive. So if somebody reaches out to us and they're like, hey, I'm interested in this unit, and if I respond and I'm like, here's a floor plan, a video, all the view photos, oh, and here's like a beautiful video of our, you know, rooftop pool at sunset, they're kind of like, wow, I literally not even gonna ask for anything else because you've sent me everything I need. So I think the team did a really good job of like using some of those tools and being really creative and really gearing us up for success for when we got busy again.
Absolutely. I love that. Super proactive and doing the work early to make a future process more efficient. I love it.
Yeah.
So Jenna, one thing you had mentioned on that I want to return to real quick is the power of the human element and what you guys have done to empower your teams similarly to be a proactive part of the leasing process. And what we've realized over the last 6 months is just how important having a human as part of that leasing process is. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about any quotes, any sentiments, anything that you guys have been hearing from your teams or what your teams are doing to make sure that a human is a part of the leasing process? And I guess kind of mirrored onto that and merging into our final question is, where do we go from here? So a lot of people talking about the future of leasing, it used to be, oh, it's all AI and robots, the leasing agents disappearing, but not really the case anymore. Now it's really where we've realized just how important and impactful a human is in instilling that trust and transparency, sentiment, emotion, and all that in the process. That was a long question. I apologize.
Yeah. Let me try to address all of that. I would say, you know, going back to this art of the virtual tour training, we've really tried to encourage our teams, you know, listen to what your customers need and then tailor based on that information, personalize based on that information. Be flexible, you know, with technology. Everybody has technology issues. Luckily, we didn't have any today. You know, be flexible with their questions. If they need, you know, you need to go back and, you know, take pictures 7 different times, then you just need to do it. one of the quotes that somebody in our training was using was, tell your customers that I'm the cameraman and you're the director, and let me know what you need. And just really try to connect. I think the other thing is storytelling. We have leasing agents who have been in the customer's shoes pre-COVID, where they had to move across the country to a new city for a job, and have been in their shoes. And so bring that experience, that storytelling and that experience, personal experience into it. It's a great way to connect. Also just address the elephant in the room and be like, how are you doing? I know this is really weird. That makes you appear human. So I know the other part of that question was the future of leasing. And I think that, things are going to continue to become more digital, more automated, more self-service. And I think we just need to embrace it. But people like doing business with people, especially when it comes to a highly emotional decision, like where I'm going to live for the next 12 plus months. And so I think it's just important to really stay human and focus on how we can humanize our brands and the experience, how we can use what we know about our customers to personalize. And that I think it kind of already is table stakes, but I think that that's going to become the biggest differentiator for us and for our customers as they're trying to decide between a couple different places to live. I think that's going to be what sets us apart.
Absolutely. That was fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And Katrina, in our prep call, I love what you said. You said you view the future of leasing as using software like a coworker. And I love that. Could you talk a little bit about where you see leasing going?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've thought that for a while, to be honest. Like if that was the way that we embrace technology as a site level person, to say like, look, I'm not competing with this person for my job. I need to say this person helps me in this way, or this person helps me in that way, and just look at it as another staff member, trying to help you get to the end goal. We're trying to sell apartments, trying to lease apartments every single day. We're trying to lease apartments. And I think that what will happen, or what's already happening, I mean, obviously like Louisa, Jenna, and I have probably very similar tools in our toolbox. So if we all have the same tools, if we all have Realync videos, fancy videos with smiling faces and happiness and charm, then where's the separating factor going to be? So I think it becomes the ones that recognize how to keep the human element in it, that remember that it's a conversation, even if it's a text or it's an email, because it is still an engagement. It's still a story. I love that, Jenna. It's still storytelling. Like the art of conversation is really what is in danger with all the tech, to the point where the ones that can still do it, the ones that just say, well, what's bringing you to Denver? Oh my gosh, you have a dog? I love dogs. That's my favorite dog. Whatever, I mean, we all know, we know the salesperson. We know that salesperson that has sincerity. I'm gonna piggyback a little bit on this. I also think the race is on for developers to figure out how to get more services on site where everything just comes to that resident. Like someone called me earlier this week in Louisville, and they have a mobile dentistry service. So like I'm picturing the dog van in Dumb and Dumber, but like a tooth pulling up. And that's not fair, because it's probably way more professional than that, but that's what I envision. But I'm just like, we still have a code on our account codes for beauty shop income, because years ago at a senior community, we actually had like booth rental there. Like they would come and do the ladies' hair, and men too, I'm sure. So I'm thinking now, like from a development standpoint, we're going to zone our communities to make sure they can have, short-term housing options, because not all can. And we're probably going to look at our amenity spaces and try to figure out how to let services come to us, but not necessarily purpose-built, like maybe multi-purpose built. And then it's like, okay, well, the dentist is here today, ready to see you. The stylist is in. I don't know. And maybe that sounds crazy. It sounds like a revert, back to something, but I do think that because tech is the way that it is, the heat is on the developer to figure out how to be newer, better, faster, have something cooler, have something nobody thought of yet, to be able to stand out in a tech-driven world that may or may not have the human touch. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And now I really want to see a van in the shape of a tooth. Right. Same. I guarantee there is one. I guarantee it. It's got to exist. Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
I do want to pull up our final poll. Simple question: is virtual leasing here to stay? Yes or no? A little bit of a planted question, but as people are answering that, Louisa, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
You're very boots on the ground and in the thick of it right now with the lease up. What do you guys? Where do you guys think it goes from here? What are you planning on it? Where are you planning on it going from here?
Well, yeah, I think with changes in technology, like naturally things are just becoming more virtual. But if we look at our, like the younger generation, it's almost a generation that's like almost more comfortable being on camera than they are in person. So I think what's interesting is like we used to focus so much on the first impression, like somebody walking through the door and like what that first impression was going to look like. But it's interesting because I think with younger generations, like the first impression has already kind of happened from who they're meeting online. So if you think about like people you follow on Instagram who you don't really know, but you feel like you already know them. And so I remember like 3 to 4 years ago, kind of before Realync, and we would do Facebook Lives. And people would come into the property and they would be like, oh yeah, Louisa, like I've seen you on Facebook Live. So I think that's really important for us to know is like we have to be more comfortable with being in front of the camera, but also like kind of connecting who we are with our brand. And I think that's hard. I don't think everybody is comfortable on camera. I know that properties will like take out the iPad and film each other and maybe critique because it's definitely not natural for all of us. But when you do look at the younger generation, like a lot of things are virtual. So it's like really important that we're going to be connecting ourselves with our brand, comfortable with being on camera and kind of like seeing that personality shine through because it's very likely that somebody's going to walk into the property and they're already going to have a first impression of like who you are. And then I think with the younger generation too, kind of what Jenna said earlier is you have to remove the friction. So, you know, if you're like, hey, let's do a virtual tour and it's not working, they're super impatient. So they might just be like already ending that tour and kind of on to the next property and maybe looking for a smoother process. But I think with leasing too, like virtual leasing, I for sure think is here to stay because of the younger generation. But I also think like that's not the only person we're going to be leasing to. You're still going to be leasing to people, you know, that are older or retired or you're millennial. So you still have to have those flexible options. You still have to make sure that you're going to have people in person that will give that really personable tour and, you know, take a couple hours. And then you have to have the ability to hop online, do the virtual tour and be prepared for that too. But I absolutely think it's here to stay. I think our younger generation loves being on camera. They're probably more comfortable on camera. And like I said, they're gonna have an impression of who you are probably well before they ever meet you in person.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And practice makes perfect. Being on camera is not abundantly comfortable for a lot of people, but for it to be integrated into the process is practice. Practice makes perfect. And like you said, to get that virtual tour right, walk the tour path, practice with someone internally, make sure that it will be a smooth, polished, professional experience. And so there are ways to definitely get to that end goal for sure.
And I just want to add that, I mean, I don't even think it has to be perfect. I think if it's not perfect, that's what makes it authentic and human. So if maybe it's not perfect the first couple times you do it, and I think that's okay. And that's what makes you relatable.
100%.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you, Jenna. So I want to remind everyone, Q&A is open. If you can type in your questions. I see a couple have come through so far. So let's, Natalie, if you can pull up the poll results. Super interested in seeing that. Okay. Yep. Thank you, everyone. Obviously here to stay, but I have a question from Shelly, and I'll throw it out to the group, see who has some thoughts here. Due to workplace flexibility and the lack of a need to live near work as much as they used to, do you guys think the 12-month lease is a thing of the past and that there's going to be a lot more variability and flexibility in the term of leases?
I almost think that the 12-month lease is a thing of the past already, just because so many of the properties are using, you know, revenue optimizing software that already tells us maybe that 12 just isn't the magic number all the time. So we're like 3 to 15. I do think though, like moving stinks. So, and I know that there's a generation that's starting to have less items that they want to hold on to, more disposable items. They're not necessarily nobody's buying a curio cabinet that they'd like to, take to the grave with them. So I get that part of it. But I just think moving in general, like Jenna said, it's such a big decision that I don't see people wanting to do it over and over and over again unless they're in a furnished situation or something like that. I mean, everybody still needs somewhere to live. I think the hard part is the urban environment. Like anybody that has a property that's close to a huge amount of, commercial space, I think that's maybe a bigger part of that topic is like, because they do need to live somewhere, but is it different now when you aren't going to that area of concentration, I suppose. And I'm not saying like urban living goes away. Please don't misunderstand any of that. But I do think that that's all going to change because office space, the need for commercial space is going to change. So it's really more of a proximity decision, in my opinion.
Yeah, appreciate
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think people want to move a lot. And I think if anything that's really going to shift from people working from home is just developers like building more dens and building more work from home space and kind of just making their home more comfortable for people that need that kind of flex space, whereas that kind of wasn't a thing that was really common in apartments was the den. So
Perfect. And then another question that we got is kind of what you were talking about, Louisa, of the younger generation being used to video. Karen said a lot of her team members that are younger have actually been a little less comfortable getting in front of cameras for work purposes. I guess for the three of you, what have you seen across your teams, especially since all three of you are virtual leasing rock stars, your teams are well versed in it. What have you seen the responses from your team? Have you seen certain people really jump in head first and adopt live video, pre-recorded video, get in front of camera and just innately be comfortable? Is it practice? What have you guys seen from your teams?
I mean, I think it's kind of like Louisa said yesterday, I think there's somebody on every team that is kind of like the ringleader and is really comfortable, and they need to kind of just be the leader with it and help encourage and practice with their teammates to kind of get them on board. I think for us, like I talked about, this kind of like idea sharing between teams has helped to kind of see what other people are doing or look what other people are doing on social media to kind of get more comfortable with like, this is what people are used to, and it's not weird that I'm going to be on Instagram Live, doing a walkthrough, whatever it is.
yeah, I could see that maybe younger people are uncomfortable. I think the thing with younger generations is they're so used to watching people constantly, so they're like, again, creating that impression. But I have like a good mix of people on my team, and yeah, I just think it does take practice. And I think virtual touring is one thing, right? Because it's like live and you're going, but like Jenna said, as long as like the kind of logging on portion is really easy, like you're gonna make mistakes, but you would probably stumble over your words if you were touring somebody in person or whatever that means. But yeah, like, filming the videos for Realync, like you can redo those. So it's about kind of just taking off that pressure and just being like, you're just talking to a camera. I had to tell myself today, like, me and the camera. But yeah, I don't think it is for everyone. So, and I think you do see when people are nervous on camera. So if it's not a fit for one of your team members, like maybe don't press it on them either, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point leading into a follow-on question for that. What have you all done to encourage your teams that may not be innately comfortable? Have you found ways to help coach people through that, to instill that comfort and confidence with video? Any tips or tricks on that front for people that are trying to spur team members in that direction?
We've done some contests. Yeah, we've done some contests just to, let people have a little bit of fun with it. And then Matt, I know Sarah on your team has been really great about like, I'll practice with you, and like doing practice tours with where it's like very little pressure, especially for people who are maybe nervous about the technology or just, want to make sure that they look okay on camera. So I think that that's like a really great way to just, the stakes are low. So.
Yeah, I film some, and I call myself the one take wonder. Like, unless it's real bad, I'm not doing it again. So like there's one where I couldn't remember. It was like, is it megabytes per second? I still can't say it if that's what it is. But nevertheless, I say it wrong, and then I think I say it wrong again, and then I'm like, what is it? And then the person that's filming says it, and then I just repeat it, and then we just keep going because I just, we have to show them that authenticity. Like I think Jenna said earlier, like if it's not perfect, is that good? But I also think that ties into why the younger generation struggles. Like my daughter's 14, and I don't feel like we've intentionally bred a perfectionist necessarily, but there's something about that breeding and looming here about what perfect is and what it needs to be. And so I think that fear of it going out there and not being absolutely perfect and being permanent, like this is the Snapchat generation, so it goes away, poof, didn't happen, so I think there's some permanence in what gets recorded, and then they do expect that perfectionism. And so I mean, we do encourage them to have fun. We do try to share the videos of the people that have done them. But I think we're still a little slow to get around to some of it and get that library built up. So that way that personality shines through and is fun and funny. But I'll do anything on camera. I even said, I think we need to do some acting coaching. Like we need some, like true performance coaching, because that is some of what we do. That's a skill that we need to have, whether it's behind the camera or live. Gotta turn it on.
Absolutely. Yeah. We did a video that was for a specific marketing campaign, and we had each employee record the same thing. And we wanted them to just keep it recording, break it up into segments. We're going to edit it. And so we'll take your best take. And I think our team has probably watched the blooper reel that we put together 10 times more than we have the actual video. And it just makes it easier. You get it out. It's fun, and it doesn't have to be serious. And like you said, Jenna, letting that realness and authenticity shine through, it definitely adds that trust.
It humanizes your brand for sure.
Absolutely. Excellent. Well, we are right at the top of the hour. So this was perfect timing wise. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to everyone that joined our discussion about leasing, the future of leasing. If anyone has any questions about anything we talked about virtual leasing, self-guided tours, video, how to integrate all of that, definitely reach out and let us know. We also recorded the webinar. And so if there's anyone that didn't attend or may enjoy the conversation, definitely stay tuned. We'll be posting the recording as soon as possible. And then there will be a follow-up poll as well. We want your feedback. Like I said, this is our first hosted webinar as Realync. And so we want to know how we did, what we can do better, and valuable topics moving forward as well. So looking to be a value add partner in the industry. We appreciate all three of our panelists. Thank you so much. Virtual Zoom applause for all of you. Really appreciate your time, insight, and everything that you're doing for the industry. So thank you, everyone. Take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will talk soon.